Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first and certainly not the last Game Analytics webinar. Today, we are diving into the world of mobile game monetization. My name is Thomas Hupka, and I'm the marketing manager at Game Analytics. For those unfamiliar, Game Analytics is the leading analytics platform for mobile, Roblox, PC, and console, providing powerful tools to optimize game performance, improve player experience, and support market research. With over 13 years in the industry, we've helped some of the biggest developers and studios and publishers turn data into actionable insights. And today we are going to show you how to use this data to navigate your monetization strategies. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our host, Alison Bylas, the COO of Game Analytics. Alison, the floor
Thanks,
is yours.
Thomas. Great, thanks. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. We're excited to be here. I'm Allison, I'm the COO at Game Analytics, and today we are going to deep dive into this evolving world of monetization for mobile games, specifically looking at web shops and how they can impact your financial results for your studios. So we're going to be going over with our panel some overarching trends for mobile game monetization, kind of setting the stage and talking about the environment we're in today. We'll give some tips for optimizing conversion and also spender behavior. And we're going to also provide some benchmark data as well that I think you'll find really interesting towards the end. I encourage you to ask questions. I'm not sure what platform you're on or where it is exactly, but you can comment and ask questions, and we will be getting to those at the end. And we have a lot to cover today. I want to quickly mention the partnership between Exala and Game Analytics, which is aimed at providing a bridge between monetization tools and analytics tools for game developers. And we do this specifically with our in-depth monetization dashboard, where you can see all of your revenue data from ads to in-app purchase and Exala web shops all in one place. It's a very handy place to be able to understand your total monetization picture, and in particular with that web shop data in there as well. Without further ado, I want to introduce our expert panel. So let me introduce them as they pop onto the screen with us right now. First, I have Katla. She's our senior product manager at Game Analytics, deeply involved in the monetization dashboard and tool set that we offer. Carl, the SVP of Business Development at Exala, is with us here today. Hello, coming in from foggy, soon to be sunny Seattle. And Artem as well, the head of monetization products at Exala, is here with us as well. So hi, everyone. First, let's pass the mic to everyone to give a quick introduction. Carl, will you start for us? Let us know what you do, your purview here for the webinar, and also a quick introduction to Exala would be great too. You're muted.
Gosh, that was such a good intro too. Thanks, Allison. As introduced, my name is Carl Stricker. I'm head of biz dev over at Exala, and I have one of the coolest jobs in gaming. I get to work with a super talented team that work with game creators of all sizes. We believe great games come from everywhere, and we work with them to scale their games, increase their revenue, and help improve their margins. And Exala, really, to boil it down, we are a global video game e-commerce company. We provide solutions to developers to monetize and distribute their games, of course. But really, at the end of the day, we're all about empowering developers to have a direct relationship with their gamers, scale, and keep more of their money. And that's what it comes down to. So we'll talk about some of those things today.
Super. Can we go to Artem?
Hey, guys. First of all, it's great to be here. So once again, my name is Artem, and I've been working in gaming industry for the past 8-ish years, I guess. And I'm doing product management and monetization for the past 15 years. So for the past 6 years, I've been leading monetization unit at Exala. So it was, and it is, incredible journey so far. So I'm excited to share some insights and experiences with you guys today. Looking forward to it.
Super. And Katla.
Yes, hi everybody. As mentioned, I am a product manager here at Game Analytics, with Allison and Thomas introduced to you all. my job as a product manager is, I would say, also one of the greatest jobs to have in the gaming industry. We help game developers optimize their games, studios and developers of all sizes and shapes, depending on their availability to work with data. So my edge here is knowing how to work with the data and knowing how to analyze it and identify it to optimize your monetization. And then I think the cooperation here is going to be very interesting.
Super. Yeah, thank you. Also love that angle as well, helping developers like make the most out of their games and putting these creative efforts out into the world. So let's start by looking at some of the overarching trends for mobile games right now. You know, depending on your perspective, mobile's a platform that's tough to compete on. It's changed quite a bit over in the last period of time. We foresee changes coming in the future. In general, it's tough for new developers to get their footing. Carl, could you kick us off with some numbers about the mobile industry right now and help set the stage for us just to, you know, what environment are we speaking in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work closely with a couple different data partners. So some of this data is out there, folks can find it. But when we look just kind of, if we frame the total addressable market for gaming and just start at the very top, according to Newzoo, these are partners we get to work with regularly. Looking just at 2024, the games market, we expect to generate about $188 billion. And so that does represent growth year on year. So we see a slow return to growth, but albeit it is growth, that's about 2.1% up. When we take a look sort of just at mobile gaming as a segment within that market, that's at almost $93 billion. And so think about it as almost half of the global gaming industry is mobile, which is pretty consistent. It's up 3% year on year, which is good. It is a return to growth overall. We see some improving economic conditions. We see continuous performance of some existing games out there. And then we've seen some recent heavy hitters also start to help grow that top line for mobile gaming. We also work with Eldora. And so Eldora is another data research firm. They've pegged the mobile gaming market just a little bit higher, but they still are consistent when it comes to return to growth. They see it at closer to $109 billion, 4% year on year. And again, just over half of the overall market. So I think the thing to step back and look at is mobile gaming's growing. The overall market is growing. And if you, again, step back and look at the CAGR, 2022 to 27, we still see growth of 3% and a forecast of around $213 billion over the next few years. So real positive signs in the right direction for the industry.
Okay, so there's opportunity out there. I would say the growth is not what we've seen in the past for mobile, but it is back to slow growth. I mean, perspective from anyone here, what does that mean for new developers in particular? Like, do we feel like this growth is maybe consolidated into existing versus new, or, you know, how does this landscape welcome new developers or not?
And I can, Allison, I can say a little bit more because I wanted to dig into it a little bit. I think that's a great question. Yeah. And we could probably spend the whole webinar talking about some of the challenges. Like if we're being really direct, we know developers out there have challenges, right? It's a tough environment. CPMs are lower. Funding and capital has been a bit more of a challenge. We know the IDFA has challenged us with user acquisition. So we can kind of go on these trends. But at the end of the day, you know, it's an opportunity when we think about how do developers expand their reach, how do they keep more of their money, exploring things that the DMA enables with direct to consumer. You know, saturation's a challenge. And so I wanted to find out how many apps are released out there. It'd be fun to do a poll. But we know every month there's 40,000 new apps on Google Play and the App Store, which means each platform has over 2 million apps out there. So you're competing with an incredible quantity just to break through and help your game get discovered. 95% of those are free. And so when I think about, and where we'll go later, is the opportunity with direct to consumer, I think that's a chance for you to own those relationships and really tell your own story.
We just kind of went through a bump, if you will, or the slowdown, and just coming back to growth means that studios are looking for these opportunities for monetization, right? Beyond maybe what they were doing before. But it is a tough space still with, you mentioned, Carl, the IDFA changes, and we're not going to dive deep into ad monetization today, but I do want to talk about the challenges that those are still having in the market. And maybe Katla, you can speak a little bit more to this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like Carl mentioned, the IDFA has posed some challenges for developers who are heavily relying on that for monetization. And with those challenges also come opportunities, which I think also provide some opportunities for new developers to step into the market that haven't been relying so heavily on one method of monetization, so to speak. We can see now that the app tracking is being denied for iOS users by up to 70% in some regions. It varies a little bit, but it is not going down, and I don't think it will continue to. It will continue to rise. That people will protect their privacy with that. But that, of course, come other opportunities to use first-party data and other monetization strategies. So I definitely think that will allow for new app developers to get into the market, and everybody's kind of got a reset button with that, and everybody has to catch up, and that gives a little bit of an advantage.
Makes sense. What about this direct to consumer approach and web shops? How do these fit into the landscape? Artem, can you speak to direct to consumer?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, well, from my perspective, they fit very well. So direct to consumer and web shop as an instance of direct to consumer are a huge trend these days. And it feels like it's just the beginning of the trend. So for example, in the first 2 years of Xsolla web shop existence, we launched like hundreds web shops, I think, which was surprisingly a lot considering how skeptical the industry was about web shops those days. But in 2024, we launched more than 150 web shops. So moreover, today we launched web shops for at least, I guess, 40 out of top 100 grossing games in the world, which is a very strong indicator of direct to consumer's ability to fit into today's landscape. So some stats for you guys. So when a web shop is done, right, you can expect around 30 to 40% of players to start shifting purchases from in-game to the web. And we see revenue increase by 11 to 16% minimum. And it's only up to studio how far they want to go. It's relatively easy to achieve conversion rates of 40% from visits to purchase, with more than a half visitors making repeated purchases. So I've seen cases where web shop revenue is more than in-game revenue, and I'm talking about AAA mobile games.
Okay, super. Yeah, Thomas, I think there is one question from the audience we could cover on this, which is what are the mobile titles that are driving this rebound? Because again, it gets to this like, hi, David. That's nice to see a friendly face. It gets to this concept of new versus existing studios and kind of where is the growth happening. I also want to hear, let's answer that question, but then I also want to hear about web shops and their appropriateness for new games versus existing games. But let's start with the question about driving the rebound.
I can jump in and take that one, Allison. I think, look, again, I always wanted to quote the great data partners we have. I think, the question is what titles are driving the rebound, up between 2 and 4% year on year. So again, return to growth, which is positive. Data AI is a really great tool we use. And when we look at data AI and we look at trailing 12 months in terms of revenue, year on year. Where's that growth coming from? There's some heavy hitters, like I mentioned. I mean, look no further than Scopely and Monopoly Go. I won't necessarily quote the numbers here now. That's, again, pretty accessible, but Last War Survival is up. Whiteout Survival from Century Games is up significantly. Royal Match from Dream Games, Brawl Stars, Joynet Games doing really well. Roblox up significantly as well. And you can kind of go down the list. That's sort of the top 8 or 9. But there's some games across various genres that are seeing really strong growth year on year that help to push us in the right direction there.
Mm-hmm. And what about this question of web shops and the appropriateness? You were giving some examples of Artem of you've launched X number of web shops over this period. That, you know, how appropriate are web shops if you're just building your first new game?
Well, actually, it could be very appropriate. More than that, one of the best results we've seen is for games that actually start building web shop even before game was launched. So games that did pre-order, campaigns, they actually start to gather in players' contacts in exchange of a valuable gift before the game has been launched, before the web shop has been launched. And this is a very smart strategy, because with web shops, the number one goal, the number one problem is how to switch players from in-game to the web. And when you start early, you can actually have a very good kickstart from the beginning. You can have a grand opening event. You can have a lot of marketing activities that will support that. And yeah, that's a good strategy, to be honest. But of course, if we talk about small, tiny, little indie games, direct to consumer might be hard. So anyone who wants to go this path should think about resources and experience they have. It's demanding.
Yeah. Okay, great. I see some other questions popping through, but I want to kind of keep guiding the conversation just because I'm getting a little bit lost. But we will kind of keep going through, and then towards the end, again, we will try to pop these in, or if I see them in our chat, we can try to pull them in. Thank you for adding the questions, and keep them coming. But just shifting a little bit, and maybe also where we were getting to now, Artem, is maybe we can shift to specifically look at shopping behavior and spending insights. I think that was the question by Hunting as well. So looking more closely at those players who actually open their wallet and spend money in their games through in-app purchase or web shop. Carl, I know you have some more market data to shed some light on this space as well, which I think it's really interesting just to see what the opportunity is for people spending money in games. I say that because mobile or a large portion of mobile has been solely focused on advertising monetization for a very long time, and are kind of switching over. So let's talk about the opportunity with.
Yeah. Again, we go back to looking at some of the data from Newzoo, and then you start looking at payers and players. And so we see growth there as well. So with global paying gamers, there's now over 1.5 billion across all platforms, which is something like 45% of all gamers. We're nearing 4 billion gamers worldwide, which is just incredible to see that continued top growth in users out there. 4.5% up to 3.4 billion players. So we're getting near to the 4 billion number. I think with mobile, what we see, there's a Vorhaus study out there right now looking at the US. 1 in 5 mobile gamers is spending over 100 annually. I always think it's funny when I talk to my friend groups, and they see that I'm in gaming, and you ask, "Hey, do you play games?" No, I don't. But I spend $100 a month in Design Mansion or Design Home or Candy Crush in the game, and they're actually gamers and they may not know it. But gaming's showing some strength there on the purchase side. Certainly, mobile gaming has to adapt to the changes, right? We talked a little bit about some of those changes in the market. Around privacy-related monetization, some of the UA challenges, and just now I think the opportunity with a more open ecosystem overall. But those players are out there, and it's great to see the increase in payers as well.
What kind of factors do impact player spending behavior in mobile games. Katla, can you speak to like these levers that are there for getting people to spend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really depends on a lot of factors of how to get people to start opening their wallets in your game. So it's really important to really look at the users you have in your game. And now it's even more important than ever that you don't just develop a game with the expectation that you can acquire the exact users for that game. You need to kind of build a game and then identify your user base and look at kind of the behavioral mechanics between the players and the gameplay to see if there are frictions anywhere. Are there any patterns? Kind of see the behavioral of the masses, so to speak, to optimize your monetization strategies based on that. And I think, yeah. And then, of course, there are also genre-specific strategies and there are region-specific strategies. It really depends on what you are developing and where you are releasing the game, how to adapt these. So looking at psychological behaviors in some games, buying avatars or new skins or buying new lives, conveniences, these all differ between regions. So really trying to segment your user base to see the differences so you can adapt accordingly in each region and for each user base of your game. Really important. And then, of course, I think a very important factor is the access to payment methods as well. There's one thing to have the opportunities to buy something in your game, but if the actual payment isn't working, that causes some friction that's hard to fix with gameplay. As with all other products,
the regions and demographics,
Yeah, exactly. And I think as with all other products, gaming is not specific in this, just knowing your audience, like what do they want? And if you don't know that, for example, for small kind of homogeneous development teams where they assume the games is very common sense and they expect the behavior, that might not be the case for your players. So having the data to confirm hypotheses is very important and see how it plays with different audiences.
Definitely. What about the specific behaviors that we're seeing? And we were getting to some of those before as well, but the different behaviors of players in game with payers in game versus in web shops. Artem or Carl, can you speak to how is the behavior different between these two?
Yeah, sure. And frankly, that's one of my favorite topics, to be honest, because like studying players' behavior is not a new thing, right? So we as an industry have been doing that for years and years now. But with web shops, we kind of have to start over again. So let me explain. So our brain is very context dependent computing device. So it always try to simplify things so that our bodies can spend less energy to survive, right? So nothing has changed for the last 10,000 years. So so when a players enter a web shop, like their brains does pretty much the same trick. It understands that the context has changed, that this is the web, and makes player act accordingly. So suddenly saying, say, a shopping cart is not surprising for a player anymore. They are not surprised to see price tags that go beyond $99. They are not pissed off by a requirement to enter payment credentials, and so on and so on. So now what's different and how you can use it to your advantage. So firstly, when a product or service take a new form, like well distinguished from the norm, the business game in our case has a unique and actually very rare opportunity to re-anchor a customer to a new higher pricing tier. And this is exactly what I see with webshop. So dolphins, they became whales, whales became super whales, and so on. Secondly, a good webshop is always all about the value. So a bigger discount, more for the same price, something really unique, and so on. So a combination of sense of urgency plus an ability to get the same offer in the game, plus say a loyalty program, and all of that leads to increasing consumption. So as a result, web shops average check was twice higher than in-game, and I guess, well, that's not the maximum potential from what I've seen. And I want to add a few words about regional peculiarities. That is an interesting thing as well, because willingness to pay depends on ability to pay as well. So with web shops, you want to do more region-specific activities like events, marketing campaigns, because with web shops, you are not limited to just credit cards. And in certain regions, you can expect X2, X3 increase in sales by just providing convenient payment methods. So there are a lot of countries in this world where credit cards are not popular or are not available for everyone. So there is a lot of exotic payment methods. So if you want to go for tier 3 countries, if they are important for your game, doing direct to consumer is probably the only one viable option here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now Allison, I might jump into. I think what Katla and Artem is saying is really good stuff. Another thing we see and sort of is common knowledge is on mobile games, your revenue is coming from 5 to 8% of your highest payers, generally speaking, and sometimes those curves can be a little bit different. But we've started to see changing consumer expectations, and so there's a dynamic happening where those players specifically expect to play in game and pay on web. And so they're looking for that web shop. They expect that web shop. We know that when they're engaged in these web experiences, they're more higher engaged. They're less likely to churn. And it becomes a bit of a daily habit if it's run and operated with the right rigor. And that's another opportunity to create visibility, awareness, all the personalized offers and things that tap into some of those purchase mechanisms that Katla was touching on.
Katla, you were talking about spenders and their retention patterns as well. Maybe speak to that a little bit. It's related in that, like, when a player becomes a spender, they retain more, but you have specific numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. We can see in our data that of course, now that you can rely less on ad monetization, in some cases, you rely more on retention and in-app purchases. There is actually a very positive correlation there that as soon as a player becomes a paying player, their retention can double and sometimes triple that of non-paying players. So getting that first, and then it's of course the question of which came first, the egg or the chicken. But I think as soon as users start paying for a product, they are a bit more committed. So getting longer retention also allows you for better data analysis because you have more data, you have more behavioral analytics available to see cohort analysis. You can do more A/B testings. You can do all kinds of analysis because, as Artem says, we don't change much as humans, and if you know the behavior of the masses, you can adapt and optimize your strategies very quickly accordingly. And these numbers, looking at regions, they are across all regions. If the users are paying, their retention is a lot bigger. Day one retention is maybe 50% more, and then you go to day 28 retention, and it's triple. So they are staying longer in the game as soon as they start paying, and that of course provides other opportunities as well. And as they've been touching about the web shops, there are impulsive payments and there are deliberate payments, which are different between different genres. And knowing the behavioral and being able, like Artem said, to implement those very quickly in your gameplay really makes a difference.
Yeah. So then it's a matter of like finding this balance between in-app purchase and web shops and also advertising. I think some of what you're saying as well, like ensuring that you're putting your web shop and in-app purchase and advertising monetization into your lifetime value calculations and also into your UA strategies. So this is like closing the full loop, looking at the whole picture of operating a game, of course. But there's something here double down on in terms of getting players moving from free content into paid content in general. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. But maybe Artem, you can speak to that, this free, how to convert players who are free into spending in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So there is like, I guess, 1,000 ways to implement a decent like web shop strategy. But I think all the strategies should be designed around, let's call it like 3 pillars or whatever. So the first thing which is important is letting players know about the existence of web shop. And the second part here is continuously reinforce this knowledge. So you should communicate about web shop a lot. To be honest, to start the process, you always want to emphasize that your web shop is where value resides, and web shops, they are all about added value. So it's a good to have a, say, Discord channel, forum, or maybe use social media if that works for a particular game. So conversion wise, the best strategy is to promote a web shop in the game, but please be careful. So no one could ever do that directly. So you can't say like, hey, tap here and purchase with a 20% discount and then redirect to a store. So platforms probably won't like that. So you have to be smart about this part. So one partner of ours, I can't say the name, but all of you know them for sure. So they actively promote their web shop, in-game promotions included. So what they do, they show players a banner with a question. So do you want to learn how to get plus 20% with every single purchase or something like this? So they are not promoting alternative payments or anything like that. So that banner, it leads to their website, but not to the store section. So they use the support page as a proxy, and that actually makes this in-game banner like 100% compliant. So you always want to be smart about this part. So the second pillar of building a decent strategy to actually transform in-game, maybe non-paying or paying player to web shop paying user is whatever you want it or not, web shops, they come along with added friction, like authentication, adding payment details, understanding the flow, understanding the value. So those are the biggest areas of added friction. And one of the best strategy to fight with this is treating your web shop as a continuation of your game. So you need to minimize like the amount of effort required for players to learn how to use a web shop. For example, try your best to mirror UI of the in-game store, so same colors, same buttons, say same tags, labels, and stuff. So the same thing applied to UX. So the purchase flow logic should be pretty much the same as in the game. And probably like the last part of what you need to effectively transfer players to a web shop. So it's it's about how you will activate them and how you will make them will make them to buy stuff. So first time purchasing experience is very important, like crucial for web shop. So drive players to a store, for example, with free gift campaigns. So we've seen cases where like there are hundreds of thousands of claims per day, like even within hours. So very heavy load. So this worked pretty well to drive a ton of traffic to your store. And then you want to have like one time highly personalized offer that will be so goddamn good that it will be almost impossible to resist. Give it a time limit. With this purchase, give something like web exclusive currency that is not available in the game and can be used to get insanely valuable items that are impossible or very hard to obtain in the game. So at this stage, your goal is to actually form a new purchasing habit by positioning your web shop as a place where players always can find something of extreme value. So I think I have like several examples. Again, unfortunately, I can't use names, but one of partner of ours, they used influencer to start a marketing campaign. So this influencer gave away coupons for free items plus ability to purchase a very unique offer. And this campaign bring them X9 in sales during the period. Mm-hmm. And again, like all examples, it's all AAA mobile games. So we talk about like millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. Another interesting case was an offline event for a very, very popular AR game. So it was new web shop unique offer plus a discount on the first purchase. So sales, they jumped from something like 200,000 probably maybe to 3, 4, 5, 6 millions within a day. And of course, like I've seen examples of free gift campaigns with promo and special, and that worked pretty well for certain partners. And they've seen increase in daily active users, something from 6,000 per day to 23,000 per day. So something like almost 300% of increase. So with web shops, it's relatively easy achievable because it's a new thing, because if done right, web shop always have something of extreme value. So it's not that hard to convert players at this point, if done correctly, of course.
I mean, one thing I appreciate about Xsolla is just the amount of information that you put out about web shops and optimizing them. Obviously, it's a win-win when these web shops work. But there are like thousands of ways really that you can tweak and play with what's going on with your offers and the different, as you said, everything that you just listed and then some, which I think is really interesting. I'm wondering if most players that are going to web shops, are they already spending money within the game?
Yeah, most of the time. Plus, I would always suggest to start with whales. I mean, like with web shop.
Okay, just go to the top.
It was basically created for whales. Of course, like everyone else can definitely bring a lot to the table, but for whales, it worked just perfectly. Especially if you sell expensive packages, that's just a very good strategy.
Yeah. This idea of community building as well through a web shop, I think, is another like clever angle to them. That, I mean, you're saying that it started with whales, but in this environment where user acquisition is also difficult and you're wanting to kind of build up communities potentially pre-launch, you can do that through like a web shop and the surrounding capabilities, I suppose, but the web and a website in general, which would include web shop functionality. Yeah, do you see that working well? Can you speak more to the community building aspect?
I think, and Artem, I'll jump in real quick, because what we've seen actually is exactly that. We talk about it as a web shop, but really when you look at best practices at who's doing it really well, it just becomes part of an integrated landing page for your game. Okay, so where you have a leaderboard, where you have updates on, product updates, news, studio information, information about upcoming content for your game, all of that stuff becomes integrated into a single destination where you manage a direct relationship with your community, and there happens to be a store there, and that really helps it become more than just a store. It becomes a community. People are coming, your players are coming expecting to find out information about the game, to see where they are on the leaderboard, to purchase content. And some of that's, like Artem is touching on, exclusive content, limited time offers. And all that becomes part of making this a daily habit. So when it's done really well, to your point, Allison, it needs to be an integrated part of your community building, really.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking before about new versus existing games and kind of evolving a monetization strategy over time. Just an example, we've seen Voodoo transitioning from ads only, hyper casual, to more hybrid, adding in-app purchases. And if you're playing their games, you typically start with ads, and then they start to add in some of these other monetization features. And I'm just curious what everyone's take is on this in terms of adjusting monetization strategies over time.
Yeah, I think it's smart. I think you have to do that. And so your monetization mix and just understanding your monetization mix, that's super, super critical to commercial success. And there's so many variables, right? And Katla touched on a ton of these, but genre, platform, geo, your player segmentation, all of those have different sort of purchase triggers or purchase mechanisms or purchase incentives. The availability of different offerings, different substitutes, all of that stuff is great. So you don't want to limit it. It's just how do you do that in concert with your game design to make sure you do that in a scalable way that creates a fair environment for payers and non-players and helps build a good community in most markets. That doesn't apply across the board globally. But a developer seeking a new revenue opportunity is smart and isn't really a surprise at all. And be surprised if they weren't experimenting and doing that stuff, frankly.
Yeah, just evolving, just as the game evolves over time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Katla, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just going to second what Carl's saying. I think, this is really a game of survival of the most adaptive. You got to be able to adapt quickly and adapt to the changes that are constantly coming. I don't think we've seen the last of changes yet. So not putting all your eggs in one basket again and really trying to diversify your monetization strategies is definitely the way to go.
What about personalizing them as well? We see studios using data in smart ways to kind of personalize what the strategy is. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yep. And I think that kind of, again, it all boils, I think this topic is very complicated, but at the same time, very simple. It's just like how many layers of the onion you're peeling. But again, it is really just looking at your players' behavior and finding if there are any frictions. Have you done any adaptations? What are the behaviors of users who installed here and you did this, and then doing some kind of funnels or cohort analyses and really trying to figure it out, because and now just repeating myself, we are all very alike in behavioral aspects and how we react to things. So if you're able to make these segmentations of players in your game, they are unlikely to drastically change unless you're drastically changing your game. So just monitoring your data, monitoring the user behaviors, and trying out different versions with A/B testings. The reactions of the users is really important.
But there are differences. I mean, you just touched on, there's maybe a global method for a game or a global audience for a game, but there are segments as well, like slicing and dicing. Like we've talked about some with like geos and whatnot, but you can also get into like behavioral segmentation and adapt monetization strategies based on that. An example, and it's an anecdote, but I'm playing this weird, it's not weird. It's nerdy. It's like a block Tetris style game where you just have a pad. And I think at first it thought I was a pretty casual one. They were showing me ads all the time. And then they realized like how much I was playing. So they started to get some money out of me over time. Like they clearly understood my play pattern somehow and adapted the game and their monetization strategy to me. I'm pretty sure.
We used to, Allison is so smart. I mean, we used to talk a lot about, debating the treatment of an asset or the price or whatever it might be, where the button placement is. And it came down now to just you A/B test everything, because rather than spend hours in a room debating it, we can do the A/B test. We can put that in front of some small cohort of users, and we can come back with real data. And this stuff is incremental, but when you scale it, you really find out how to create efficiencies in your game. We actually, I'll use one quick example. One of our good partners up in Vancouver, Canada, it's a Thinking Ape. They were testing the idea of this new monetization strategy around subscriptions. And so what they were able to do was put an offer in front of 50. So very small, right? Just 50 what you call whales. We might also call them a high value gamer, but the segment that is generating sort of the most revenue and is really also the most influential. And one of the things I do love about having your own direct relationship is the ability to communicate with your players more efficiently. And so you hear what they want, good, bad, and otherwise. They're going to be vocal. And being able to listen to them and hear their feedback. And there was some notion that maybe a subscription could work. There was interest. So they tested that out. They got the player feedback, and that ended up becoming pretty successful. It's out there now. Other players saw it. How do we get that offer as well? And generally over time, they turned the dial, and it generated significant upside for them. So absolutely testing everything. And Artem, if you're thinking about some of this stuff and you're not doing it today, there's certainly a ton of experts here that can talk offline and work through your specific cases. But we do at Xsolla have a built-in tool that quickly runs and measures A/B test campaigns. So you can get those lessons on your own web shop, run those, apply those learnings broadly. And whether that's visuals, promotions, catalog items, you're going to find out what your audience wants and you need to optimize, right? So fully recommend, if you're not doing that, you're doing that as much as you can. Test and learn, right?
Artem, do you want to add to that, to kind of how you've seen studios using A/B testing?
Well, when it comes to monetization, I frankly don't know any other options how you can actually build something. You basically have to A/B test everything, even if you know your players for years, even if everything seemed to work perfectly, you still have to do that all the time, just because not only games are evolving, players are evolving as well. And it doesn't matter what kind of monetization trick, mechanic, bias we will use, we will throw at them, they will adapt. And that's the reason why we see so many new amendments to existing monetization mechanics. We see throughout the last years, 100 types of gacha, 10 types of battle passes, and all this stuff. It keeps evolving and evolving. So you want to continue A/B test everything, like web shops included, pretty much the same stuff. Web shop is not different for any game, honestly. So you have to A/B test everything. And the best results that I've seen probably comes from studios who taken this very seriously, who A/B test every single step they make. Yeah. That is demanding, of course. That requires time, resources, or having a decent partner who will do it on your behalf. Doesn't matter, but it has some requirements. Still worth it.
I mean, I have a shtick about A/B testing for sure. I love it and I hate it, in that you need to have a large enough audience size to really get meaningful, statistically relevant results coming out of it. And so it can be a big distraction maybe as you're starting out with a game. But of course, if you're up and running and optimizing things later on, then it definitely makes sense. That's kind of my number one about A/B testing. My second one is that you shouldn't forget the off group. So if your A/B test works for this group, you have that other group where it's not working for, and maybe you should do a different optimization for them. So really understanding who it works for with your A/B test and who it doesn't. And maybe you can learn a bit more about those audiences, and it's a tool to further segment, essentially. Very powerful for sure.
Yeah, I think I'll just agree on that. Seeing the different behaviors between the different A/B testing groups is this kind of specialization of monetization strategies.
Yeah. Let's get into our next section, just checking time and wanting to make sure we get some time for questions as well. But we talked about going over some benchmarks here. We've already thrown some things in, but I'm wondering if we're missing anything on, benchmarks for capture rates, average revenue per paying user, these types of things on web shops. Can the Xsolla crew speak a little bit more to what kind of numbers and spending outcomes can you find on web shops?
Yeah, and I can jump in and then hand it to Artem, who's got even more data and more insights. But yeah, benchmarks are good. We're talking about all this stuff, and it doesn't matter if we don't share benchmarks and trying to give folks some goalposts. But Artem mentioned earlier a little about capture rate, right? So this is shift. How much of that mix can you ultimately shift? We see everything from 20% to 50%, depending on how aggressive. I will say too, this is applicable to developers of all sizes. And so from the smallest indies to the biggest AAA studios, folks are experimenting, they're learning, and how much you want to turn the dial is really up to you and your individual strategy. But even just dipping your toe in the water and learning is something that we see where everyone starts. But you can expect 20% to 50%. Last month at Gamescom in Germany, we actually had another one of our partners, Tilting Point, and they're out of New York. They've got offices around the world, talking about Warhammer and Chaos and Conquest. And so we had them talking about some of their benchmarks. It's on pocketgamer.biz. It's an article out there you can find. But they've got 50% now of its revenue in this game coming from its web shop. So pretty significant impact there. And then when you look at other kind of other big benchmarks, the incremental revenue, I mean, the margin is 10 to 15, 16% positive for you. We talked a little bit about conversion rates. I think we talked about conversion rates when we have some of those payers come to the web shop. That's typically consistently around 40 to 50% of those folks are going to convert. And then ultimately that first time purchase leads to repeat purchases. And this is why we operate this as a service. And that's close to 60% when it comes down to the repeat purchase rate. So some really good benchmarks there that we see. Now, since I talked about Tilting Point for a second, what did they do? Well, they sort of did some of the things that Artem touched on, which is they drove awareness of the web shop. They're communicating through Discord, Facebook, Twitter, their website. And that's really about, how do we make sure our players know that we exist? They also do a really good job of, limited time offers, creating free offers, web exclusive deals. Star Trek Timelines, another one of their games, they refresh twice a week, which again helps create that daily habit. They limit the purchase per unique user. So you can't come in every day and buy unlimited stuff. I know that might sound backwards, but it's really about what's that offer today. And we get that player to come back 2 days later, a day later for a repeat purchase. And also, how do you incentivize your players? They offer 5% more virtual currency when purchased via the web. So you're communicating that while this is good for us as developers, it's also good for you as players. So some pretty good stuff there. Since you talked about ARPU, Allison, it's all over the place. It could be depending on your game. We've got games that are smaller games that have an ARPU of $20. We've got games that are 4X games that do $2,000 or $3,000. In all cases, though, as I scroll through sort of a list of different case studies, in all cases, you're seeing significant revenue coming through your web shop, and you're seeing significant revenue uplift for your game overall, along with those improved margins. So all of this is accretive to your business.
Artem, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think I can add some numbers here. So let's talk a little bit about genres. And well, I get this question really often. Like, for example, can a casual game build a web store? So like I honestly, like the first years of like web shop as a trend existence, I was very into understanding the genre peculiarities for web development. But I think I come to a conclusion that not the genres that actually matters. What matters is how the game is being monetized. So what kind of monetization mechanics a game has. So I would say like direct to consumer is genre independent. But for example, if a casual game monetization is built only around situational sales, yeah, that would be hard to build a web shop probably, at least at this point, while you can promote sales within the app directly. Yeah. But if say a casual game has a strong meta, have enough purchases. So have a reason to purchase something, not like instantly simultaneous, but for a reason. So in this case, it worked perfectly. So back to the numbers. So the best results we ever seen. Again, we launched to the date more than 400 web shops, I think, 400 plus. So the best results we've seen came from strategies. So everything core, to be honest, like RPGs, strategies, simulations actually perform very well. So for strategies, the average capture rate is something like 40%, which is actually a lot. So it's a lot, and this is an average number. So we've seen cases where we've seen some crazy numbers. To be honest, it's even scary sometimes. And the action genre worked pretty well. Casinos, and of course we talked about social casinos. They perform pretty well because, well, they have a lot of stuff. So the average, our PPU, I would say the highest, again, it's strategies, and surprisingly racing games and casinos for what we've seen. And the average number of purchases per quarter that we see, the highest number of repeated purchases is in casinos. And shooting games, those have like very surprisingly first-person shooters. They do more repeated purchases than everyone else. Frankly, like X2 more than everyone else. So
interesting. So what I'm hearing in terms of there needs to be something to purchase. So obviously, monetization is always very closely tied to an in-game economy, right? And kind of what if your game has that type of mechanic to it, or resources, or these things that, there has to be something to buy. I'm glad we're able to touch on benchmarks, because just quickly, I want to mention that with Exala, we built a calculator that is in our monetization dashboard. And I believe on our website as well, where you can kind of play with some of these numbers. Because when I first started speaking with Exala, it was like, how does this work exactly? And what could I expect? If this is my current state with in-app purchases, what would this look like if I put the effort into building a web shop? And that's what this calculator can help studios take a look at. So just to mention that is out there as a resource, and we'll send it to those listening as well, so that you can take a look and play around with it. Thanks for that information, guys. Maybe now, and with just a few minutes left, we can hit a few questions potentially. I'll look to Thomas to throw some up onto the screen. I know there were a few that came through in the chat as well. So if you guys are seeing ones you want to hit on. Okay. Yesterday's news about Playtika acquiring mobile game maker Superplay for $1.95 billion USD. Could this be a turning point for the industry's outlook?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly positive, right, to see dollars flowing through, more M&A activity. I think it's picking up, and overall in the quarter, and I just think you have to take that as a positive sign, like we talked about at the top.
I look at this consolidation. I think of the little guys constantly. Just the long tail of gaming, and how it's just very, very difficult to break into this space. So when I see the consolidation happening, a little bit of my heart goes like, oh, that makes it tough. But of course, that's a good sign. Consolidation and growth, as you said, money flowing in the industry is a great thing. And always, and we see this with game analytics all the time, there's always room for those breakout hits, no matter how many juggernaut, consolidated big studio publishers there are out there. There's always these kind of breakouts, which are exciting to see as well. Yeah.
For sure.
Switching away from in-app monetization, given how badly Roblox have managed their ad monetization framework, what other options are out there for Roblox studios? This is a little bit different from our topic today, but you guys might have some thoughts on this.
The question disappeared quickly. Yeah, I don't know that I would comment personally on Roblox. I don't know if I'm the person that would get into that right now. But certainly, you look at what they've done with user-generated content and really becoming a platform, and it's impressive. And so I think there's no shortage of opportunity for Roblox going ahead. If you look at their recent developer conference, some of the benchmarks and milestones were mind-blowing in terms of what they're doing and the growth that's there. We highlighted them at the top as one of the top 10 in revenue in terms of year-on-year growth. And so certainly this is an ad question. I don't know if anyone on the call wants to get specifically into that detail.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the advertising space. I think that is what Roblox sees as a growth opportunity for them. So they're going to keep hammering on it and make it work at some point. We think that Roblox is a fascinating platform. Game analytics, we have quite a big footprint of Roblox studios also using us to optimize those in-game purchases, optimize the player experience overall. And of course, a lot of Roblox games are using branded partnerships as well as another revenue stream, right? And just branded content in general on Roblox is a whole other way of making revenue. Some of the biggest that is exactly what they're doing while they wait for these other areas of monetization to mature on the platform. So really interesting one to be watching. What are the most effective ways to drive players to your web shop that still adhere to store policy? It's a good one.
Yeah, I can answer to that, of course. And well, first thing first. So with web shops, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Meaning, if you have a working communication channel, just stick to it. You don't want to use everything you have, shooting everywhere. Start with something that is already working. If you don't have anything, I would definitely suggest trying to build a Discord channel. From what we've seen, that worked very well. If your audience using social media is perfect, you can talk with them there. Again, in-game promotion is probably one of the most effective ways, but you need to be careful. Again, you can't directly promote out of the store payments. You can say, here's the link to a web shop. You can say, here we have alternative payments somewhere, click here, or stuff like that. But of course, you can't include links that will lead to the website, FAQ section, support section. So you always have to have a proxy page between your game and the store. So again, you need to experiment. Start with whales, then add more and more segments. Experiment with different channels for them. But again, simple things work the best. And yeah, be bold, but of course, respect the policy. You don't want to get into trouble.
The only thing I'll add to in closing on top of that is we've got like I said, just a set of great experts that do this every single day. So if you want to talk about your specific use case, your specific title, your country, the regional restrictions, it changes if you're in Europe a little bit, in Asia, reach out to us and we're happy to connect with you directly and share some of the do's and don'ts and help advise you on what your strategy might look like.
Super. Thank you, everyone. We will end there because we're a little bit over time. I'm sure we're all reachable also on LinkedIn. So just reach out to those with any hanging questions. We really appreciate everyone's time today and just want to say thank you to the panel for all the preparation for this and also for spending the time today. Thank you.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Allison, for setting this up. Thanks, Kat.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Thanks, everyone.